Hey everyone, welcome back in our adventure to bring the B-58 Hustler back to life. If you're new to the channel, I'm Chris, and we've been spending the last number of months building a quad 70mm EDF B-58 Hustler. Now in this video, we finished the entire airplane. That means done, ready for flight. And so we are talking about the paint process, weathering, all of that, making it look like the characteristic bomber that it is. The paint scheme I chose is that of Aircraft One when they were doing their testing at Convair. And so it's an extremely bright color scheme and it looks awesome on the airplane. And be sure to stick around to the end. We take it out in the sun. It looks incredible, shining with all of that aluminum work that we do. And so with that said, let's get into it. We're gonna start out finishing up a few things, getting the airplane paint ready, and then it's on to paint. So let's go. All right, we have gone through a lot, and I wanted to just stop, take a minute and talk through what we've done thus far. As you can see, the base airframe colors are painted. I had originally intended to do flight metal, which is a thin foil tape, but I just physically ran out of time. First, we started out, I installed nav lights throughout the whole airframe, and I just used a simple lighting system I found on Amazon that works quite well, actually. And there were clear lenses. I used Tamiya clear red and clear green to spray the lenses on the inside and glue them onto the surface then with Formula 56 canopy glue. And so the other thing is, we've got the tank here now. There are 2 screws that are used as the mounts. Those are screwed into hard points that are in the fuselage. There are keyholes in the plywood rib that are in the base of the tank. And so when it goes on, it pushes backwards. So I'm really hoping to fly with the tank. To clean it up, I actually put packing tape down on the fuselage and smushed icing, which I talked about in our last video, into the gap. And so when you lift this off, it is a perfect fit, and that packing tape, the Bondo doesn't stick to it. Before painting it all, I had to restore all of the panel lines that got filled in the hatch cleanup process. And so I used a double-ended scribe and a riffling file, and that's just a file that has a curved, tapered end to it. And so the double-ended scribe etches the line into the primer, but if you don't have enough buildup there to create a recess, that's where the riffling file comes in, and it helps to kind of create a little bit larger V groove. And so once that was all done, everything was cleaned up, then it was on to the paint. In the process of all of this, I actually found a source for Federal Standard paint colors, custom mixed. It's an acrylic enamel, and so it ended up spraying really nicely. It may be a little bit thick, but the color is spot on. I need Federal Standard colors for this model because it is competition, and I have to document what those colors are. I'd never used the paint before, and it was a risk that I did take, but I needed the colors and I didn't want to spend a fortune on custom mixed paint. I did let the paint dry 24 hours before doing anything with it. From there, it was on to the aluminum. I backmasked all of the colors that I had painted, and I ended up using Alclad paint, which is a plastic model paint, and it looks fantastic on the airframe, especially out in the sun. And so I painted the entire airframe with Alclad aluminum. And the interesting thing is, when you pour it into the airbrush, it looks like molten metal. It's a very robust paint. You can handle it. It won't take fingerprints or anything like that. Now, to paint it, it's not a paint you can hose pipe on. I actually had a fan tip that I installed onto my Grex airbrush that gave me a wider spray width. It sprayed a lot more like I was spraying with a larger touch-up gun or something like that. And so I actually have a whole assortment of different colors of Alclad that I'm going to be spraying across the airframe to give it that, natural metal look. So let's get on to that. Before we get into it, I want to provide a big shout out to the guys at the Grissom Air Museum. They caught wind of this project and sent me a really cool care package. And so I just wanted to publicly thank them for that. If you're ever in the area, Grissom Air Base was a huge part of the B-58 Hustler operations, and they actually have one on display. And so again, thank you to them. It was really awesome for them to do that. All right, the Hustler is done. It has been a process getting here, and I just wanted to touch on a few things before we take this out into the sun and see what she really looks like. First of all, as you saw, I used multiple colors of Alclad paint, and that really gives a nice convincing look. These are the base aluminum colors, and they are extremely robust, so I can handle this with my bare hands. I intentionally used these base aluminums knowing that I could handle the airplane easily. It was just a process of masking off individual panels, and there was some artistic license taken in that process, but I also did use photo references to try and simulate as best I could what I saw in the pictures. From there, all of the markings are painted with the exception of a few decals, and so I worked with Cali Graphics on those. You know, not having to make my own paint masks saved me a bunch of time. And so in the process, I discovered MRP paints. It's actually called Mr. Paint. And so those are airbrush ready plastic model paints, and I use those to paint black, the insignia blue, insignia red, the white, all of that, and it's excellent, excellent paint. To finish out that small lettering and such, I just made my own water slide decals. And so because this is a light surface with a dark decal going down, it worked out perfectly and really easily. One exception being the ejection seat markings. I placed a white vinyl triangle down first and then placed the decal over that, and that gave me the white ejection seat lettering that I needed. And so to wrap it all up, it was onto the weathering. And with this being modeled as Aircraft One from Convair, I didn't go heavily on the weathering. The model has molded panel lines, and so I did a wash with an acrylic raw umber color. I just brushed that over all of the panel lines and then wiped it off with a paper towel lightly soaked with Tamiya acrylic thinner and wiped it off in the direction of the airflow on the flying surfaces and more vertically on the fuselage and vertical surfaces. And that brought out subtly all of the panel lines. From there, I just added some individual streaking, focusing on, of course, mostly the engines, because that's where most of that dirt and grime collected. And then to finish that all up, I did some airbrush shading with flat black to simulate exhaust, to darken up the engine nacelles because they did have some heat staining. Again, I was using reference pictures where I could to try and simulate what I saw. And so I have yet to take it outside. Let's take this out and see what she looks like out in the sun. I can't wait. Wow, it has been an incredible journey getting to this point. It's been full of twists and turns and challenges, but at this point, the airplane is done. She is ready to fly, and I'm really excited to get her going. And actually, we attempted to fly the airplane a while back, unsuccessfully, I will say, but we learned a lot of lessons from that. As a result, I've made a bunch of tweaks to the airframe. I've changed out tires. We were throwing tires off the thing. I am much more confident in the next outing, which will be happening very, very soon. So if you'd like to see that video, you can see that here. Otherwise, it is time to get this airplane flown. Until then, I'll see you at the field.